Mags.
Hello and welcome to Mark Talks Mags. This time we're going to have a look at a weekly music paper called Disc, which in its day was a competitor to Melody Maker, New Musical Express and Record Mirror. But due to bad, editorial decisions, it ended up being swallowed up by Record Mirror, which in turn they went under as well. Of course, Sounds came along, which made the big three Sounds, NME and Melody Maker, so Disc and Record Mirror were long forgotten. But anyway, Disc, this is from June the 10th, 1972. Now, it was an interesting publication because at this point in time, it was a serious rock paper. But at some point during 1973, the teeny boppers took over, and as I say, I guess it was probably a bad editorial decision, where they felt they had to go down that route rather than try and contend or to be in opposition to the big guns of Melody Maker and NME as serious rock papers. But it was a serious paper, and I think at this point in time, 71, 72, their writers were as good as anything anywhere else. They were really good writers, as you'll find out as we go through this. So I'm hoping there'll be some interesting stuff in here. So as we say, June the 10th, 1972. And on the cover, we have Donovan, who by this point in time wasn't the very big star, the new Dylan that he was in the 60s, but he was still a relevant force, I guess. And it's the features on the front are Rolling Stones, a strong possibility for the second Great Western Express Festival. At the top of the page we've got Bolan Month again. Of course, this was the point in time where Mark Bolan and T-Rex were at their absolute peak of their powers. Bowie hadn't come along quite yet to usurp them, although I've got to say, June the 10th, 1972, this was the month of the famous Starman appearance, so it wasn't long before he did come along and usurp Mark. Anyway, let's go on to the next page. As per usual in these papers, the page 2 we got the charts, and number 1 in the charts is Bowlin' Boogie by T-Rex, which we've just been speaking about. Number 2 is Machine Head by Deep Purple. Number 3, Fog on the Time by Lindisfarne. Number 4, Argus by Wishbone Ash. Number 5, Harvest by Neil Young. An interesting and eclectic top 5, but certainly all good in their own way. And the singles charts, Metal Guru, number 1, as I say, the absolute peak of their powers. I would say probably when Metal Guru was released, if I think of that run of perfect singles, I think when Metal Guru was released, they were at their absolute peak. So number 1, Metal Guru. Number 2, Rocket Man by Elton John. Number 3, At the Club by the Drifters. Number 4, Vincent by Don McLean, follow up to American Pie. And number 5, Oh Babe, What Would You Say by Hurricane Smith, who obviously was more famous as a record producer than a singer, but he did have a couple of hit singles during this period. Other singles, The Brilliant Lady Eleanor by Lindisfarne, California Man by The Move, moving down through, Mary Had a Little Lamb by Wings, which was their first proper chart hit. It was when Sea Moon and Hi 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 came out after this that they really hit the charts big time. Then we got a few bad ones. Sister Jane by New World, who were famously Opportunity Knocks winners. Tumbling Dice by the Stones, Leeds United by Leeds United Football Club, Take Me Back Home by Slade, Open Up by Mungo Jerry, and a few others. In America, number 1 was Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull, famously my guilty pleasure. Number 2 was First Take by Roberta Flack. Number 3, Harvest by Neil Young. Number 4, America by the band America, who as you probably realise, were sons of, based in the UK, they were sons of US servicemen serving over here, I think, in Norfolk. And they got together and formed their band and had a huge hit with Horse with No Name. So they were number 4, Back Home in America. Number 5, Graham Nash and Dave Crosby. Singles, number 1 was Candyman by Sammy Davis. Number 2, Oh Girl by the Shy-Lights. Number 3, Sylvia's Mother by Dr. Hook. Number 4, Nice to Be With You by Gallery. And number 5, Little Bitty Pretty One by Jackson 5. On the news page, a Mark Bolan maxi single and album of old material is out this month. The LP, Hard on Love, comprises of very early songs such as Jasper C. Debussy, Hippie Gumbo and the Perfume Garden of Gulliver Smith. A new Who single is out next week. Tommy is being turned into an opera album. The new Who single was Joined Together. And they're off on tour. Jethro Tull's history book, Tour in America, have a double album, Living in the Past, the history of their music with photographs, which unsurprisingly I've got a copy of. It's a beautifully presented album, gatefold cover. Bowie and Mott for Whale gig. This was a well publicised, or in retrospect a well publicised gig at the Festival Hall, wasn't it? Bowie and Mott Hooper will be joint bill-toppers at a special Save the Whale concert at London's Royal Festival Hall. Kenny Everett will compare the show, which starts at 8 p.m. Both Bowie and Hooper are supporters of Friends of the Earth and appear without fee. It's gone down in history, that one. Michael Jackson's new single is Rockin' Robin. Family have called off their UK tour of America, etc, etc. So as we can see, as I say, serious rock next to chart pop, and it was a good mix, and I always thought it was a great shame when it went under. Next page we've got John Peel's column. John Peel wrote a column for Disc and also reviewed the singles most of the time, I think, which we may find in a minute. Peel had moved on a little bit from the hippy-dippy days of his writings in Gandalf's Garden, and he was writing in a more serious tone now as a rock critic, if you like, rather than a flower child. Here we have Band on the Road is Nazareth, who had a few hit singles at this point in time. Broken Down Angel, Bad Bad Boy, This Flight Tonight. Great hard rock band, Nazareth. Full-page ad for Tom Jones, close-up. Brian Wilson's other half. Brian Wilson with American Spring. This was his wife's duo, wasn't it? His wife Marilyn and her sister Diana Rovell made one decent album, actually. Very sort of typically American West Coast sort of stuff, but really good. Half-page piece on Shannon, who we've spoken about before, the great rock and roll revivalists. Folk acoustic page. I'm no folkie, says Thompson. That's Richard Thompson, and I guess he really wasn't, was he? If you listen to early Fairport Convention, which is long before this, I know, they had more in common with the aforementioned American West Coast than they did English folk. But they moved towards that, obviously. But Thompson was, or is, more of a rock guitarist, really. Don McLean, on How to Be a Humble Hero. Soul Pages is featuring the Stylistics this time, and Al Green. Roxy, the band behind the image. Of course, this is the very early days of Roxy music too. Roxy made a fairly unremarkable impact on the Muddy Thousands at Lincoln. This is at a festival. Despite their outward flamboyance, it was a quietish and reasonably self-conscious set. Yeah, there was something lurking behind it all that suggests we might do well to keep tabs on this band. Their music is a strange combination of 50s, 60s and 70s funk and electronic spaceship noises. The band is just 8 months old, but things have moved quickly for them, especially since John Peel gave them some airtime on sounds of the 70s. The first album is released on June the 16th, just a week after this piece, be followed in July by the single Virginia Plain. They're a polished, nicely spoken bunch, fastidious more than averagely eloquent, and with enough latent drive to develop into something quite powerful. Weren't they right? And interestingly, at no point in this piece, which goes on for a good couple of hundred more words, do they call him Roxy Music. So the critic who's doing it has clearly been under the impression they were just called Roxy. So there we go, and actually the photograph of them. They obviously weren't very well known then, because according to this, it's 3 members of the band, Rick Denton, Andy Mackay and Paul Thompson. Rick Denton. And it calls them Roxy there too. On to the next page, we have a piece about Chicory Tip, who were hoping to be taken a bit more seriously. That was the problem, of course, with a lot of these glam rock bands. They were actually rockers, but they'd been moulded by record companies and management into teeny bop bands, and then they wanted to be taken more seriously. The most famous example, of course, being Sweet. Argent, new single, Tragedy. Well, that was the follow-up to the incredible Hold Your Head Up, and it was another hit, but apart from God Gave Rock and Roll to You afterwards, that was the last time they troubled the charts. Gilbert O'Sullivan, we've spoken about before. Ooh Wackadoo Wackaday, new hit single. Then a strange choice for the centre page poster this week is Fairport Convention's Dave Swarbrick. Genius though he is, I'd hardly call him poster material. So there we are. The centre page piece is about Donovan, and then we come on to dates. That's the various concerts going on that week. And then the singles page, reviewed by John Peel. Who have we got here? Elvis Presley, An American Trilogy, which of course is caught in a bit of controversy today because of it mentioned in Dixie and Dixieland, which of course is as I say, caught in controversy. The Troggs, ZZ Top, long before they had a hit with hit album and became famous. Their new single was Francine. Flash, American Spring. Faust. Oh, that had to be Peel reviewing singles. You wouldn't expect to see Faust reviewed in a singles column, would you? But they are, and the single is So Far. And I'll read this one. Peel says, the first time I heard tell of Faust was when I saw their extraordinary first LP in its equally extraordinary sleeve, and felt that regardless of the music within, I had to acquire one. When the music turned out to be highly original and very exciting, that was a welcome bonus. This single occurred during sessions for the second LP, which I've not yet heard, and will serve as an introduction to the band. I would advise you to hear the LP though, because it must be one of the most important of the past few years. It's not often that you hear a band that is heading off into a totally new direction, and it's surprising that when you do, many of those bands are from the continent. It would be easy to say that Faust's music was Germanic, and to let it go at that, but I don't think that would be enough. It's really music born of a technological age in which there is neither time nor room for sentiment. Faust paint a bleak vision with music in much the way Leonard Cohen or Nico do with words. It's not easy to describe it in terms of what has gone before. The single opens with a typical warm folksy guitar with male voices singing gently a memorable little tune. This improbable calm is suddenly shattered by a wholly alien electronic uproar, reminiscent of tearing, rending metal, which violates and abuses the little song. The little song continues throughout without deviating, despite the regular and then constant assault of the deviant noises. The two fade out together. A remarkable single, which is unlikely to get many plays or sales. A great pity. Now, this is what I say. I know this is John Peel, but this is what I say about disc writing well, because that, frankly, is a superb piece of writing. And you get a little bit fed up with reading singles reviews just giving simply an opinion whether it's good or bad. Now, Peel's gone in depth there, and I think personally he's just about summed Faust up in a one short review. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. More singles here. Blackfoot Sue, Standing in the Road, an absolute banger. B-side, Celestial Plane, even more of a banger. And one-hit wonders, of course. Cher, Hawkwind, This has got to be Silver Machine. Yeah, Silver Machine. Oh, do I read it all? I'll just read a little bit of it. I've always felt that Hawkwind were a great deal better live than they are in the studio. Studio work exposes their weaknesses and seems to drain much of the energy that is manifest at their gigs. Not sure I agree with Peel there. I think a lot of their studio work's superb. Silver Machine is very exciting indeed, opening with atmospheric noises of the type you can hear surrounding the voices of persons prowling about the moon. It moves into a very heavy Germanic boogie with definite overtones of the admirable Can and to a lesser extent Amon-Düül too. Well, if you heard Archangel Thunderbird by Amon-Düül 2, it sounds bloody like Hawkwind, so there are comparisons. The overall effect is that of a thunderous rock band recorded in a wind tunnel, and I look forward to being able to play this on the radio. Of course, it became a huge hit. One of the strangest one-hit wonders of all, I guess, Hawkwind. Moving on to albums. Don McLean, Tapestry, huge hit. Now, they even review here 20 dynamic hits. This is K-Tel Records, which, unlike the Top of the Pops records, they were by the original artists. So they were a little bit like the Now records of their day. But there were several companies made them, K-Tel, Ronco, Arcade. And in my early days of record buying, I'd regularly buy them. And a couple of the issues they did, including this one, looking at what was on it, that remained very important to me. Argent are on it, Redbone are on it, Deep Purple are on it. They were good albums. Manfred Mann, Mick Softly, etc. Live music reviews. Oh, David Bowie. It's be interesting. Right, it's quite a long review, but this is by a fella called Mick Nixon. David Bowie is one of the great enigmas of music, but he showed that he is also one of the great entertainers when his current British tour opened at Newcastle City Hall last Friday. Armed with his own fine vocals and stage presence, an immaculate sound system, a light show, and above all the best rock band I have seen or heard for years, he took the audience by storm. It really was a shame that the 2,500 capacity hall was only 1/3 full, but it was not surprising. The music-loving fans of Tyneside could have had no idea of the goodies that were in store. We'll skip a little bit here. It says here, Forsaken is Lauren Bacall gear, which of course refers to the hunky-dory look, which he had actually done away with in January of this year. So he'd actually been Ziggy-fied for 6 months here. Forsaken his Lauren Bacall gear, he was garbed in a multicoloured seersucker jumpsuit that made him look like a Snake Man character from one of those American comic strip magazines, which I guess was what he was trying to do. The many amplifiers and drums had been placed around the edges of the stage, and the reason soon became clear as David Bowie strolled, leapt and minced around. He showed himself to be the supreme showman. And this a bit more. The first 2 numbers were tracks from the forthcoming album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, including the title track. Spiders from Mars is the name of David's backing group. It consists of Mick Ronson on lead, Trevor Boulder, that of course should read Boulder, on bass, and Mick Woodmansey on drums. I've already hinted at their quality. A really fresh blast of wind through a stale scene. Ronson was outstanding, technically brilliant without being self-indulgent. After the opening 5 rockers, David, with the band's help, managed an almost perfect reproduction of Starman, which was followed by an equally fine version of the excellent Changes. By now, sweat was pouring off David's short carrot-coloured hair, and the audience welcomed every number with wild enthusiasm. And this a bit more. The end of the 60-minute set was met by a genuine, spontaneous standing ovation. The band took a little time to return for the encore so that David could change outfits again. Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars had given their all. Nothing had been spared to give the audience a good time. If there was a fault, though, it can hardly be called that. It was that David Bowie tried a little hard to show what a good time he was having. Well, a superb review. Prior to the Starman appearance on Top of the Pops, prior to Ziggy coming out, and again, superbly written. So as I say, you know, Disc really was a top paper. It was fairly thin, it was very cheap, but their writers were superb. And as I say, less than a year later, editorial decision or what, it turned into a teeny bopper rag, basically. Anyway, back to this one, let's move on. Guitar Special. It's going on about bass today. Featuring on Bill Wyman and Paul McCartney. A Day at the Palace. This was the Crystal Palace garden party. Beach Boys, Shannon Keith Moon and Legs Larry Smith take tea on the Palace Pond. Legs Larry Smith, one member of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. Richie Havens, Joe Cocker and Melanie. Then we've got some ads, which are the normal loons, caftans, Jovan boots, etc. Nice. Lindisfarne, Newcastle Brown Ale t-shirts. Long sleeve t-shirts, £1.50. Quite fun actually. Newcastle Brown label with Lindisfarne written above it. Excellent. Little bit of gossip like all of these magazines had. Standard strip cartoon. And onto the back page. Well, that's a bit naughty for a weekly magazine. When a girl becomes a woman, Femfresh becomes essential. And we have what would be a rather controversial picture here. I'm not sure I should show you it if I'm putting it on. Oh no, I will do. If it gets taken down, it gets taken down. You got a girl sat here, half of which is dressed in the archetypal St Trinian's type school uniform, and the other half is completely naked. So that's the girl becomes a woman. Don't think you get away with that one today, would you? Anyway, I'm just off to have another look at this. Until the next time, see you then. Bye-bye.